Up next, we have Dr. Lisa Trevino. Dr. Trevino is the Vice President for the DHR Health Institute for Research and Development. Over the past 10 years, Dr. Trevino established and grew the research portfolio at DHR Health, leading to over 100 ongoing research projects covering oncology, liver disease, genomics, cardiology, and infectious diseases for both therapeutics and devices, leading to the creation of the DHR Health Institute for Research and Development. It is the major translation institute serving the predominantly Latino and Hispanic population of the Rio Grande Valley. Dr. Lisa Trevino trained as a molecular biologist and research scientist with a focus on genetic and genomic landscape of pediatric and adult tumors at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital and the Human Genome Sequencing Center at Baylor College of Medicine. Her passion extends to community engagement and health literacy, advanced clinical care opportunities, and medical access and availability. Let's welcome Dr. Lisa Trevino.
Hi, good morning. Everybody hear me okay? Thank you all for being here. And of course, Dr. Rao introduced a little bit what you'll be hearing today. I am a product of the Rio Grande Valley community. I graduated from PSJ High School in 1992. Anyone from PSJ here? Yay. Okay, well, go Bears. And I always like to start by thanking you, right? Because none of us would be here without you and the guidance that you give your students. And I will say this every time I speak to teachers. My sophomore year biology teacher, Mr. Ramirez, was actually instrumental to me advancing and really getting into science and biology. And it was really because of his, and if you know him, he's a little quirky and he's a little like, he does anything possible to get the students to learn. And I always remember, and I'll take it to the grave with me, where he says, well, when you're in the hallway and you see that cute girl or that cute boy, you want to say, hi, hyaluronic acid. So it was just the little things that he did and the creativeness that he got and really how he was able to make everything relevant to the students, right? That kept us engaged and kept, well, a lot of us engaged. And so thank you very, very much for all that you do. I know it's tough being an educator, especially in today's times, having to deal with a lot of what the kids bring to the schools. So first and foremost, thank you. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And I know a lot of the professionals that are here today would not be here without you and your colleagues in education. So I'm going to talk to you about what goes into the different career paths that go into a clinical research institute like what we have at DHR Health. And I think the resounding theme throughout my talk and some of the talks today is that basically your students can really go into any direction, but it'll all come back, right? Because everything really comes to a helm where the student can decide, or where you as a teacher or counselor can say, you know what, you want to be a writer, you want to be a scientist, you want to be a nurse. But really the resounding theme throughout is how clinical research and the delivery of healthcare are so synergistic, and that what really, really gets to the high quality care that our patients in the community deserve. So I'll talk to you, not too much, Dr. Rao talked to you about our Clinical Research Institute. I'll introduce to you what I think and what I've seen over the years, some of the backgrounds and pathways that the kids can take and align them towards the skill sets that go into doing clinical research in a healthcare system, the key stakeholders in clinical research, and again, the responsibility that I think you as teachers and educators and guiders, if you will, and of us in healthcare, our responsibility to the youth and to the students to get them to where they want to be, to love what they want to do, and again, really that product, that end product of patient care and quality. So Dr. Rao mentioned we are really the single and largest, most comprehensive cancer research institute. And when I say comprehensive, it's because we touch upon many fields. It's just not a cancer research institute or a liver disease research institute. We really hit upon those disease areas that touch the community in the Rio Grande Valley. diabetes, liver disease, oncology, cardiovascular disease. Of course, now COVID is the white hot right now. But that's really not it. And comprehensive also because we're addressing, again, public health issues and crises and how it's affecting everybody from our grandparents, again, to kids in elementary. So again, we provide this service to the community, if you will, because it's much needed here. And you'll see as we go and as you hear throughout the day, what this research institute is doing, and again, integrating education and training. Can you all hear me? Okay. So, right, the elements of a strong and established research infrastructure. So all of these circles and this pathway lead to what we have at the DHR Health Institute and what some of the large research enterprises in the country have. You have to have an Office of Grants and Contracts that reviews the studies coming in, the research that you want to do. You have to make sure that it aligns with your mission and vision. What I learned when I started at DHR Health is that really, at the end of the day, it's a business, right? You have to protect those that are working with you, their livelihoods. So you have to learn about budgets and what terms can you agree with, like how are you protecting your institution, your employees, and ultimately your patients. The Office of Human Research Protection also goes into healthcare clinical research. And this is something that's really at the nucleus of conducting clinical research, is protecting the safety and welfare of those individuals that are going to be on the studies. So you have to take into account the again, what are we doing in our studies? Is it safe? Is it, rational? Is it ethical, right? And so that office is really critical in allowing studies to come through our institute and actually take place in general with human subjects. Office of Clinical Research Operations is what I really oversee at the institute, oversee the staff, the hiring, the onboarding, the training, making sure that we're meeting our metrics, that the studies are, staying on point, that we are doing the best that we can to keep, the institute afloat. So there's a lot that goes into that Office of Clinical Research Operations. Office of Marketing and Public Relations, that's key as well, because we have to communicate to you. We have to communicate to the public what we're doing. Transparency is key in all of this, right? What have we heard in the last 4 or 5 years? Misinformation, misguidance. Again, it's really important that us, as the healthcare providers, the scientists and the research, work with the marketing, the media, the news outlets to communicate, the most accurate and true information. Biobanking is a center or a division or a cluster within our institute and many others, where we are, gathering. Basically, I like to describe or convey what a biobank is. When you go to a bank like Rio Bank or Lone Star Bank, it's a bank with money. Our biobank is a research-ready collection and repertoire of human specimens, research-ready specimens, whether it be urine or blood or serum or whatever it is, so that researchers can say, hey, I've identified a new marker, and I need to look at it from patients in the urine of patients that had pancreatic cancer. So we work really closely with all the ancillary services in our health system to set up and maintain this biobank. Dr. Betancourt is key in running and managing that biobank. Office of Research Accounting, again, critical to the success of the Research Institute. Making sure, again, that we are breaking even, that we're not going under, that the monies that are coming in are being allocated to the proper service lines. And then the Office of Enhanced Technology, again, data. Big data is huge in research right now, and I think you may hear a little bit later about career opportunities in this. So you've got bioinformatics, computer science. So really what I've described here is a multitude of careers that go into clinical research or a clinical research infrastructure. So when you think of clinical research, it's not just scientists and nurses and physicians, right? It's a lot of people. It's attorneys, it's writers, it's people in media, it's accountants, it's CPAs. It's really a nice and beautiful culmination of many different career paths. So keep this in mind when you're talking to your students and they come to you and say, well, what can I do with research? Well, it's just not being a scientist. It's really important to understand a lot of the different skill sets and educational backgrounds that can go into this. So basically, I just kind of made that circle horizontal, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit, and you're probably familiar with this, but if not, it's really important to understand that there's a lot of key backgrounds. So you have a student that wants to go into business or healthcare administration, finance, accounting, compliance, law, political science, right? Understanding the policies that go into healthcare. Nursing, research nurses are critical to the execution of our clinical research trials. I mentioned to you compliance, right? We have to have people that understand the regulations. Clinical research is one of the most highly regulated areas, or really areas in the arena of healthcare, because we are actually doing research and experiments, if you will, on human subjects. Laboratory scientists, Mr. Dennis Davis will talk to you about career paths in laboratory, right? Again, we work with many different services within a health system to make a really sound and cogent clinical research enterprise. Biology, of course, the obvious, but this is something key that I want to communicate to you, that it's just not biology. You can have interests coming from many different backgrounds that can fit into this arena of healthcare. Journalism, fine arts, marketing, computer science, bioinformatics. As I got deeper and deeper into the career of research, I really started to appreciate the importance of those individuals that liked to code, right? It's something really foreign to me as a biologist, but we work so well together, right? Because we come up with the questions of what we're looking for, and they will take a data file with millions and millions and millions of data points and bring it down to a nice one-page Excel spreadsheet that I could then turn around and further analyze. So bioinformatics, computer science is, again, very key and integral to the role of a clinical research enterprise in healthcare. Pharmacy, Dr. Ron Asuna later will talk to you about pharmacy career pathway. Pharmacy is really central also to the execution of clinical research. They've got to prep the medications, they've got to prep the chemos. They have to make sure that the medication is stored properly, right? The accountability. So medicine, physicians, of course, chemists, everything goes in. So you have these students in the palms of your hands, right? These are your students. These are the students that are coming to you and saying, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm not sure where I want to go. Well, all of these, I think you've heard at one point or another, is the direction that a student wants to go into. So clinical research can, really facilitate their growth and again, their careers. So there's key stakeholders in clinical research. Always first and front and center is the patient, right? We keep the patient always at the center, making sure that they're safe, making sure that we explain to them critically what the study's about. So front and center is a patient, yes, but the key stakeholders are going to be those individuals that are coming from the backgrounds that I just listed. So your study investigator, this is really the chief, if you will, of any clinical research. Typically, we have physicians that are being study investigators, those that have PhDs, like myself, like Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao is actually an MD PhD, doctors of osteopathic medicine, PharmDs. Those are the individuals that are really ultimately responsible for the conduct of the clinical trial, right? They are the ones that the FDA is going to go to, any regulatory agency, because they're the ones that are making sure that you're conducting the trial as you should, per protocol, right? They're the ones that are making sure that you're protecting the patients, that you are monitoring the patients for safety or any adverse events, that you are appropriately and adequately, obtaining informed consent. Going back to the regulatory side, right? You've got to be able to communicate what the study's about, and the patient has to know enough about the study and understand enough about the study to make that informed decision to participate, right? When you go into a clinic or to an appointment or to get whatever it is, you've got a consent form and it's telling you, well, these are the risks, these are the benefits. We have to make sure that that individual, that the patient in which we're trying to get onto a study really understands what the study's about. And ultimately, the PI, as we call them, or the principal investigator, is responsible. The PI is also responsible for all the accounting, the financial side. They work very closely with the administrative offices within the research institute, but again, the principal investigator is the key, is the chief of the study. They also have a big responsibility to ensure that every member on the study team knows the protocol, has the appropriate background and education, and is qualified to do the studies in which they've been delegated, or the tasks that they've been delegated. So again, just that individual that's going to have a high level of organizational skills, communicational skills, interpersonal skills, because you got to work with a lot of people. So chief and key to running a study is the principal investigator. So this is really the lead of that enterprise of researchers. So while the PI, the principal investigator, the physician, the PharmD, the scientist is the key of the study, you have clinical research coordinators, right, that are really, really at the helm of executing the study from study startup to study closeout. And has any one of you ever been on a clinical trial? No? Okay, not even kind of like a virtual one. So if you ever do, and you have the opportunity, you're going to be working most closely with the clinical research coordinator. This is the individual that you're going to talk to that's going to obtain the informed consent together with the physician, the PI, explain the study to you, have that routine contact with you, calling, scheduling, how do you feel, have you felt anything with the medication that we gave you. They are the ones that are really running the show. So I give lots of kudos to our clinical research coordinators at the Research Institute, because they are the ones that know really basically everything about the study. These individuals have typically bachelors, some have masters of science, they can be nurses. We try to bring in those that got experience because there's a learning curve, right? They have to understand what it is about human subject research, right? The regulations behind it. Now, not all of our clinical research coordinators have a bachelor's. We've brought in medical assistants. You can have, nurses also, LVNs. But mostly, this is kind of the educational background. These are the ones that are really running the boots on the ground, running the clinical trial. So we've got the PI and we've got the coordinator. Those two are really, really in close contact and throughout the duration of a study, because the PI is relying on the coordinator to communicate with them pretty much on the weekly, what's going on with the patients, is everything okay, do we have any adverse events, et cetera. Again, integral skill sets, communication, right? Organizational skills, time management skills that I'm still trying to learn to date. So again, there's things that that every one of the tiers in the research kind of enterprise have to have. I talked to you a little bit right now about data, and really this is where science and medicine is going. Dr. Rao presented to you lots of data that has been culminated throughout the years to tell you, listen, we're seeing this trend in this disease or that disease. Data coordinators, again, bachelor's, master's, doctoral level data scientists are coming into our research institute, helping us to make sense of the data. We can collect data points from millions of patients, right? I'll give you an example, blood pressures, A1Cs for diabetics, vital signs, and can we establish a trend in patients that are, let's say less than 30 that have type 2 diabetes. Again, going into big databases, extracting that data, statistics is key to, analyzing data. So you've got students that like math, that like, that math or, statistics or biostatistics. They work, again, very closely with the coordinator. So as you can see, the trend here that I'm trying to say is that everybody works really closely together. It's just not one individual running the show. If any one of these dropped out from underneath of us, the system would collapse. So data coordinators work closely with the sponsor monitors, right? What I mean by that are we work with Pfizer and Merck and AstraZeneca. We work with Vanderbilt and Harvard and UTRGV. Every single one of these, you've got to be able to communicate with them and be able to collaborate, exchange data. So data science, data coordination is also very key and integral to the clinical research enterprise. Regulatory and research compliance, again, very important. You've got patient law, you got patent law, you got compliance, you've got those individuals that are dedicated to understanding the rights and welfare of a human subject, especially on clinical research. Again, we've got attorneys that are helping us, those bachelors and masters. So again, understanding where your students want to go, what's available to them, this is something to keep in mind. And compliance doesn't really sit only in clinical research. It can be healthcare compliance, right? We work with our attorneys on a daily, again, because of the sensitivity of what is really collected at a healthcare system. Personal health information, research information about a patient on a study, all that has to be protected. While we always strive to protect the health and physical aspect of an individual, most, also very important, is their data, right? You want to make sure whatever happens to you in a health system is protected. It's yours. It has to remain private and confidential. So we need individuals to understand the laws protecting that data, protecting them, and especially in the clinical research setting. If we're going to get into what they really do within our institute, they're the ones that are responsible for maintaining regulatory information for every patient study. Again, this is the first thing that auditors, the FDA, if it happens to be that the OIG comes over and says, well, let me see the binders that you have for your heart study. Boom, we've got to be able to come out and show them that we obtain informed consent, privacy is being maintained. So again, critical to the clinical research enterprise are regulatory and research compliance coordinators. Clinical support, phlebotomists, medical assistants, again, integral to the execution of these clinical trials. We are collecting, again, biospecimens on the daily, blood, urine, saliva, whatever it may be, because it's within those biospecimens that we can get into understanding, are there biomarkers in those specimens that is going to tell us that this patient is, at a higher risk of getting Alzheimer's or breast cancer. When we do genetic testing for women at higher risk for breast cancer, you get tested for BRCA1 and BRCA2. That's in our blood, in the DNA. So you have to have, phlebotomists that are able to collect the specimen, process it in a laboratory setting, understand it, and then work again very closely with the research staff, the coordinators, and the nurses. Processing the specimens, triaging of patients, right? That they're almost together with the physician and the coordinator, that first interface in the introduction of a clinical research study. They're the ones that come in and say, okay, Mr. Garcia, thank you for coming in. I'm going to take your blood pressure, your height. This is what we're going to be doing today, and kind of helps get the patient comfortable to start the study visit. So again, integral to the execution of the daily exercises of the clinical trial. So again, did I leave it? Phlebotomists, medical assistants, LVNs, CNAs, they help the research infrastructure. Not only do they help with the healthcare setting, but also in research. Sorry, additional support for clinical research, again, research financial analysts, marketing specialists. And again, what I'm trying to convey here is that there's so many different backgrounds that can really fulfill the success of a clinical research enterprise, especially like the one that we have at DHR Health. So Phil Jackson, the coach of the Chicago Bulls for many years, the strength of the team is each individual member, and I've never seen that more evident in the team that I have now. But the strength of each member is the team. And Dr. Rao joined us about 3 years ago, and we have formulated a very, very strong team, because in that team there is trust, and there is support from one another, and there is encouragement. So I think what I've conveyed, hopefully, is that and like in anything, it takes a team to really make a successful unit work. And we've got a really strong team. So when you're talking to the students and when they're kind of deciding where they want to go, what they want to do, within a clinical research enterprise like what we have at DHR, it's really teamwork. There's no way that any one of us or the success to where we have now could be without the team. One person alone cannot do it. So again, my responsibility, your responsibility is to support, encourage, and guide. I think I wish things would have been different when I was in high school, with like when I would go to my counselors and say, well, I want to go here or I want to go there. And sometimes when students, even some of my colleagues would go to them, they'd be like, well, I don't, that's not really a good place for you to go. You should think about staying here and in the Valley. Well, 1992 was over 30 years ago, but what we have now available to us, I can understand a medical school, a nursing school, but I think we've got to be able to support and encourage these students to go, right? If they can, go, right? Get them there, and then let's see where it falls, but our job is to encourage them and to guide them. I think I showed you that their student, that was me at one point, I am in the middle, and I have all these things around me. Public health, consulting, that business aspect is really, really important. You have students that are getting masters in science and are getting an MBA. Again, that business component is absolutely critical to healthcare, right? Because they've got to understand how it works on the business side. Computer science, pharmacy, allied health. I think we're going to have the director of the PA program talk to you, right? Allied health is really, really important. Again, the communication, the journalism, I think these kids could do anything, be anything, and still participate in clinical research. That's the purpose of this slide. Possibilities are endless. I think I was told several times, well, I don't think you really want to, why would you want to do that? Actually, it was one of my family members that said, why do you want to go into biology? That's for boys. And I thought we were really progressive. No, you've got, if they want to do it, right? So their possibilities are endless. And then promising them that they are going to fail, right? It's no big deal to fail, right? Again, that's our responsibility. Explain to them, they may not know who Steve Jobs is now, right? Or Oprah, back then they know, but making it relevant and saying, look, it's okay if you fail, right? None of us, I think, would be here if we hadn't failed once or twice. So I think this last part is what I felt is most important, because you know your students, right? They come to you, do we have any nurses in? Okay, so students spend a lot of time with you, right? Sometimes they just want to go hang out. And you're like, go back to class, right? You don't have a headache, go back to class. So this is always a good opportunity to talk to them. Well, what's going on? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? So I think talk to your students, listening to them, and really letting them know that it's not so foreign to do clinical research, right? You just don't have to be a scientist. You just don't have to have a PhD or an MD to do it either. So communicating now what you know about what goes into doing clinical research and what's needed, I think, that's just another, we've leveled up what we communicate to the students. So thank you very much again. Like I thanked you at the beginning, I cannot thank you enough for what all you do. Are there any questions for me? Yes. Can I ask you to kindly repeat that? I couldn't hear.
Yes. So why, when you go to the hospital for any medical procedure, are you asked registration if you are participating in any medical research project?
That's a really, so she asked, why when you go to a hospital for any medical procedure, they ask you if you are currently on a research study. So you brought up a really, really good point, because you may be on an investigational medication, right? You may be on a drug in which whatever you're going for may interact with it, right? They need to know that. That's a really good point that you bring up, because you don't want to be on a medication on a study that may be interfered with if you receive another medication. So they ask you, are you on any study or any investigational product? So they will ask you that to ensure that whatever they treat you with or provide you with is not going to interfere in a negative way. It depends. It depends on what medication you're on, or if you have a device implanted, they'll have to know exactly what it is. They may reach around to that principal investigator and say, hey, your patient, one of your participants is here and she came in because she needs an x-ray. Is this going to interfere? So it could, and that's why I think that communication is really important. Your health record, your electronic medical record documenting that you're on a study is really important, especially if you're in the emergency room. Because you go to the emergency room, they're going to treat you so that you don't die. So they need to make sure that whatever you're on is not going to interfere. Okay, thank you very, very much, and thank you for the opportunity.